What's going on, y'all? So y'all know I like to have a lot of real serious conversations on this channel at times, but I saw a clip of the 85 South show, right? It's like they do it's like a comedy show that they do. Is they do it live. They have a YouTube channel where they interview guests, and they act foolish, they act a fool, but it's all in good taste, and it's interesting, right? So then, on the show, Chico Bean, he poses the question: did crack cocaine do more damage to the black community than slavery? And he's talking to Carlos Miller, so on and so forth. And I want to respond to that. The short answer to that is no. Crack cocaine did not do more damage to the black community than slavery. But let's further analyze this conversation because I took notes on it as well. Crack cocaine was devastating to our community. It was, right? I told y'all in a video before, majority of my father's friends that he grew up with majority of them became crack cocaine addicts. They became crack addicts. A lot of them still are to this day, right? And it has a strong hold on them to where my father tells me, I never even knew these individuals had family. They had wives, they had children, they had jobs. Because when I was born in 93. Since I was born, all I ever saw them be was what we call, it's a bad term, crackheads or crack addicts. That's what I saw them at. I saw them be nothing but that, right? Because they've been hooked on it so long and their life started to plummet every year, right? And I want to say this: crack cocaine devastated our community. It was heinous. It was a beast that broke apart families and made us lose our sense of pride in our community. When crack cocaine hit, that's when you start seeing projects people stop caring about the projects. They start letting it just go to waste. People start peeing in the stairwell. People started throwing trash everywhere. People started to become actual zombies who did not care about the upkeep of where they lived, because they were so hooked off of this drug and trying to catch this new high that they were not in their right state of mind, right? The crack cocaine made our own people do vile things. It made our people do vile things to each other and to our families, like sell drugs to their own family members, to their own mamas, aunties, uncles, and saw them go down that tunnel of despair and go down that tunnel of just like anguish. And you saw people sell the drugs and did not care at all because they were just interested in the money that it created. And then the other person on the other end was just interested in that high, right? Crack cocaine saw family members and mothers and fathers offer their own daughters to crack dealers. You saw black folks offering their daughters up, to crack dealers because they were so gone. They were not in their right mind. They were out of it, to where it shook them to the core. They didn't even recognize, I can't do this to my baby. You saw women becoming, letting their bodies be used and abused by crack dealers because they needed their fix, they needed their high, right? I say that I knew that crack cocaine had a horrible effect on people, because that's when you saw people carrying the heaviest of life. Brothers try to carry refrigerators on their back down the street to sell. Because I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, what was in this drug that had people, black folks, that had our community just so shaken and torn apart, right? I think about it now, it made black mothers do something that slavery never did. Crack cocaine made black mothers make the black woman abandon their own children, right? And she did it for that high, that fix. I heard about people stealing everything out of their parents' apartments. My father was telling me this, stealing everything out of their parents' home just to get high off crack, get as high off crack cocaine as they could, and then they overdose from it a week later, right? I saw brothers, their mothers pass away and they leave. I didn't see it. My father told me stories about brothers, mamas leaving their house and car all to them, and the mom, the son is so crack addicted. He stops paying bills. He sells, a Jaguar. He sells a Jaguar to the crack dealer, right? His mom's nice, brand new Jaguar, sell it to the crack dealer, right? And then, he has no running water. in the house, and it's just like it is nothing going on now. The house looks desolate and empty, and it was once a home. But the son, got his mom's house, got the house from his mom who passed away, and he let it go to become a shack, to become a crack den. Everybody getting high in the house. It did a number, right? Now I want to say, when I say these things, I'm not blaming my people for what happened to our folks, right? Because as everybody knows, these drugs, this crack cocaine was implemented by the government into our communities to limit and control the black community, right? It was placed into our community strategically to cause destruction and chaos, right? But nevertheless, once it touched our communities, it caused things to go downhill. It caused for our people to turn into things that we never wanted our people to become. It caused our people to become cold to one another, to not have that sense of community that we once had, where the neighbor look out for your kids. And of course, don't get me wrong, every community has always had crime and stuff like that. But for the most part, black community, the neighbor look out for your kids. Your uncle look out for the neighbor kids. All this so on and so forth. And when crack came, everybody started to focus on individual, right? I got to keep my house in order. I got to keep my kids from getting on that stuff. I got to get my mama off of that stuff. I got to get my wife off of that stuff. I got to get my husband off of this stuff, right? We saw fathers get and mothers split because the father may have been drug addicted and he couldn't shake it, right? Or the mom could have been drug addicted and she couldn't shake it. Or they both could be drug addicted and ended up losing their lives, or they just went their own way. Kids get left into the house. The child services come and take them away. All of those things, right? So I never want to act like crack cocaine did not do a number. It led to young black men being locked up for years due to drug offenses, even if they were addicts. They didn't get rehabilitation, right? They didn't get a chance to try to fix that addiction that we have now for the opioid crisis and so on and so forth, which is affecting the white community. But brothers got locked up for years for dealing drugs or buying it, right? Which caused those brothers to have a record and never be able to get a good job, which then caused high recidivation rates, going back to prison over and over again. And then when you go back to prison over and over again and you can't get no job, it causes you to have depression. And when you have an addiction, and that depression causes your addiction to worsen, right? So yes, crack was a demon for sure. It was a demon. But it wasn't anything as heinous as slavery, y'all. I said all of that to say it was nowhere near as heinous as slavery. It was heinous, but the impact, it was for sure heinous. I don't want to say it wasn't like anywhere just near, but slavery was something different, y'all. Like, they both were awful. Both atrocious things that damaged our people severely, but I could never reduce the effects or the impact of slavery just because many of our parents and grandparents actually lived through the crack era. I think people who saw the crack era firsthand say it was worse because they saw how it destroyed our community, how crack destroyed our community through their own eyes, right? Our people saw it firsthand. I saw individuals be crack addicted and going around fiending. As a little boy, I didn't know all I was watching, but as I got older, I recognized it. And those same individuals are going around fiending to this day. I'll say this, man. Black people have never recovered from the impacts of slavery. Slavery was the devil. In slavery, babies or women could be raped, and the father had to watch the gruesome act, this horrific act. He had to watch it. Just simply sit there and watch it and do nothing. Or if he intervened, he could risk the life of himself and all his babies and his wife, right? So either I intervene and stop this and try to fight the slave master or the slaver. I can do that, but I'll get killed. My children and my wife possibly would get killed too. So it's just like my kids get hurt and punished for this. I promise you, it was a mind. It mind effed so many people. It did a number on our community. This and black men watching their wives be raped, their children be sexually abused and raped and all that type of stuff, and do nothing. It eventually led to the distrust and protection that the black woman had in the black man, right? It led to a distrust. For the black woman didn't trust the black man to protect her. down the line. It led to that. It had a ripple effect down the line, because these black women saw black men being subservient and docile to another ethnicity of a man, another ethnicity, to a man of another ethnicity, and saw that man dominate them, right? Saw that man be able to dominate him, her, and her children. And the father was left, and he was really, if he wanted to do something, he was so scared of trying to do something because of what could happen to his family. That mind F's you. That puts you in a state of where you feel like you're trapped. You don't know what to do. You feel defenseless. You don't feel like a protector or a provider. If you protect, then you get killed. And who's going to be protecting your family at that point at all from then? Or your babies get killed and your wife get killed, and you don't want nothing to happen to them. So, and that in turn led to black women being distrusting in black men and saying, the lack of protection, and it trickled down for years, for centuries. It was just a trickle down effect from that, right? And when I think about, the distrust and protection from black women, for the distrust and protection that black women had for black men, I'm stuttering and stuff. I think about the scene in the movie Crash. If y'all haven't seen Crash, there's a scene where Tandy Newton, it's Terrence Howard and Tandy Newton, they're a married couple. They get stopped by the police, and it's white police officers. One of the police officers, they doing a pat down search. The police is filling up his wife, Tandy Newton. Terrence Howard's wife is getting felt up on and all that, right? And she's getting groped while she's getting patted down. And when they get in the car after the situation happens, she looked and she tells him, I'm paraphrasing, he felt all up on me, he felt me all up, and you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything to protect me. And he's looking like, what am I supposed to do? If I do something, they kill me and you. They kill me and you. And she's looking like, well, you're supposed to just die for that. When he's looking like, if I died, what was going to happen to you? You know what I mean? And if we die, what is, it's like, man, it was a catch-22, but at the same time, she felt like she wasn't protected. And it just made me think about the effects of slavery from that, and how, and people could say I'm reaching, but I just think about when slaves were when black men were slaves, and they watched these things happen to their children and daughters and even their sons. It was like, if I do something, then what? Right? So it was crazy, man. Slavery led to colorism that our community deals with the house Negro and the field Negro. The lighter skinned black individuals stayed in the house. They would be the people paraded around the house and looked at as all the good ones and so on and so forth, even though they were still treated bad in certain areas. Some of the women who were house slaves were forced to have sex and so on and so forth because they were deemed prettier. Some of the men, they still were humiliated and acted as if they were less than, but they weren't treated as they didn't get the scraps that the people in the field got. They weren't subjected to working in the fields in the hot sun, and there were certain privileges allowed to them that weren't allowed to the people in the field, which caused disdain towards the lighter skinned individuals and the dark skinned individuals, right? Like the dark skinned individuals said, light skinned individuals in the house, the light skinned individuals in the house think they're better than us. The lighter skinned thinks the lighter skinned individuals were tricked. They developed, some of them developed Stockholm syndrome, caring and becoming nurturing to the captors, and the field individuals did so as well. But then the slavers were able to turn the light-skinned individuals on the dark-skinned individuals by telling them they were so good and they weren't like the rest, and led them to actually believe this. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them started to believe this and started to undermine the individuals in the field and throw them under the bus when they tried to plan escapes, when they tried to think outside of the box to get away from the terror, because some of the ones in the house had it a little bit better. Just a little bit. And there's no such thing as better in slavery. When you're a slave. But because they had certain other privileges that some of the other ones in the field didn't have, they were just like, I'm all right. And they were undermining individuals in the field who attempted to escape the atrocities, right? So colorism came from slavery, right? So I said it, I keep saying right, but crack can't compete with crack can't compete with 100 years of oppression caused by slavery. In slavery, a mother can see her child snatched from her arms and abused and then sold off right in front of them. You can watch your child, your baby, be sold off in front of you as nothing you could do. You will never see your child again. Some of our ancestors didn't even get the chance to know their children at all. Men, women, and children were whipped, beaten. They were whipped and beaten for not working fast enough. You had individuals who had limbs cut off, hung from trees to die in front of crowds of people, to get killed and whipped in front of crowds of people. Slavery took away culture, identity, family, right to a good life from our black people, from our black folks. Again, I'll say that again. Slavery took away culture, identity, family, and right to a good life from black people. Black people were forced into slavery. Despite what Kanye West says, it wasn't a choice. And that's the difference between drugs, between the crack cocaine, between crack and slavery. Despite crack being implemented in our communities, right? It was a choice to take the drugs. It was a choice to deal the drugs. Slavery, it was no choice. It wasn't, oh, you can do this and you don't have to do this, right? And I don't want to act like the Nancy Reagan campaign, the Just Say No campaign wasn't BS, because it was total BS, right? It was BS because I know oftentimes when you're in power, when you're in poverty, and when you're living in poverty, right? Mentally, you're trying to escape the reality of the poverty, right? When you're poor, you're trying to escape the reality of your poverty, and a drug that has been purposely flooded into your community is around. It's hard to turn it down because people use that as a coping mechanism, and it's available all around. So it's hard for some people to turn that down because this person tried it, so you try it one time and you get hooked and you get addicted and you can't let it go, right? So I don't never want to minimize, like, act like, oh, all you had to do was say no. I'm not saying it was just like that, but yet and still, doing crack, it was still a choice. You could say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do any drugs, right? I'm not saying it was easy, but I'm saying it was still it was still an option. So I'm not co-signing the Just Say No campaign. It was total BS because they don't want us to say, just say no to the other young white children who are out here becoming victims of the opioid crisis, right? They don't want us to say just no to them, right? So I'm never going to co-sign that, but I'm saying, yet and still, doing crack cocaine or selling crack cocaine was a choice. Our people couldn't simply turn down slavery and walk away unscathed and intact. They could not. Slavery wasn't a choice. If you chose no, the death of you and your family was highly likely, or you would get beaten savagely or sold off. You know what I'm saying? Or no, you wouldn't know sold off. You don't know. You getting held captive. Some of y'all getting sold over here, over there to make your situation even heinous. So when you can't plot and come together and plot to run away, to make it to where you don't want to run away because you have nothing to run to. You don't know where your family is. The probability of finding them is slim to none. And even if you find them, you're not going to be able to come in. Everybody wasn't a Nat Turner during that time period. You know, even in Haiti, everybody wasn't Toussaint Louverture in those certain situations. Everybody wasn't Denmark Vesey, so on and so forth. Even though we had a lot of slave revolts, we had a lot of enslaved black folks who fought back. And I tried to dispel this whole notion when Kanye was like, oh, act like, oh, it was a lot of slaves. The slaves didn't fight back. It was a lot of slave revolts, for sure. But everybody wasn't able to get over being mind effed like that. And I understand it because what do you do when you taken from your homeland and stripped of everything and you don't know where to go, and you know people have rulership over you, and it's laws. If you escape, they're gonna bring you right back. It's like, what do? You can't build a boat and just go back home. And even you run to the north. Can you make it to the north and all that? It was just a lot. It was just crazy, man. So I say that slavery will always be the deadliest crime against our black people. While crack was despicable and it hurt our community to the core, it rocked our community, it can never compare to the 100 years of slavery, the hundreds of years of slavery and the torture that our ancestors endured in order to have our spirits broken and leave us weakened as a whole. Because it had a ripple effect. It still caused weakenings or caused the chains to be weakened between our people. It caused a distrust amongst our people that had effects or ripple effect on us, which led to us still having problems uniting for the greater good to this day. It caused the distrust in our people that still led to us having problems uniting as black people for the greater good to this very day. So therefore, I can never compare the ills and damage of slavery to anything else. Slavery was much worse. It had a much worse effect on us than crack cocaine. I would say that. Slavery had a much worse effect on us than crack cocaine. Some say integration hurt the black community as well because, while integration was a thing that our people strive for, and it was something that, I understood them striving for it because we wanted to be able to eat where we wanted to eat, right? We wanted to work in the professional ranks where white Americans ruled. We wanted to get into those ranks and make our impact and show that we was just as good or even better. And we wanted to show that we were able to be prominent and efficient outside of labor work, right? We wanted our kids to be able to go to schools where we wanted them to go. We wanted to live wherever we wanted to live. However, I understand that integration did cause us to become less self-sufficient. Because when integration was, because when segregation was a thing, black people couldn't go to the white stores to get this. They couldn't go to the white accountants. They couldn't go to some of the white doctors' offices. They couldn't go to, the white dry cleaning services. Black people say, you know what? Well, we're going to become doctors. We're going to become lawyers. We're going to become accountants. We're going to open our own stores and businesses in our own community. We're going to be able to make our own community flourish and thrive and help each other, uplift each other to a point where we can become prominent as a people and stay self-sufficient. And then we can be able to pass down these trades to our children. And then they'll be able to be like, oh man, they can keep these practices up. And they'll have a skill to be able to feed their children, feed their families, and also be able to maintain if things were ever to go wrong. But when we had integration, it was like, oh, we can just go to the predominantly white stores. We can go to predominantly white doctors' offices. So, okay, the black businesses, when Pawpaw passed away, the kids didn't want to take up the business because it's like, okay, we can just go over here now. It's all right. The dry cleaning service closed up when Pawpaw and Big Mama passed away because, hey, we don't want to do this. We don't have to keep the business going. We can just go over here, right? Then it was like the black schools. The black schools started to get, they always had less resources, but then you got people like, oh man, we're going to take them out of here and close the school down. They can just go over there. So it's just like, it caused us to be less self-sufficient in a lot of different ways. So I understand when people try to, put integration in there, but integration had nothing on slavery and it had nothing on slavery. And, crack cocaine had nothing on slavery. And I ain't gonna say it had nothing. It just didn't. The impact that slavery left was far more detrimental to our people than crack cocaine and integration. And I understood where the integration came from, from our people. Not, oh, we just want to be side by side and accept it, and we want to just, we want white folks to just acknowledge that we're good at something. It was much more than that. It's just people wanted to go where they wanted to go, eat where they wanted to eat. They didn't want to have to go way across town to eat at restaurants. They didn't want to have to, if they live in this community and the white school is right there, they didn't want to have to go travel an hour and a half across town to get to the black communities, to get to the black school. It was things like that. And they wanted to be able to work in the cream of the crop organizations to be able to get higher paying money. So I get it. I get that, to try to provide for their kids. So I understood where the integration aspirations came from. But again, slavery, nothing could compare to what that did to our people. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this subject and the topic in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm sorry for talking your head off, but when it comes to important topics like this, I can go on and I like to talk about these type of things, man. That's just me. That's just me, y'all. Machiavelli Mills TV. I'm out. Peace.